Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take a complicated stack of sources and give you the shortcut to being well-informed. Today we are deep diving into the literal engine of the electric revolution. We're talking about the battery. Okay, so let's unpack this. The holy grail for any electric vehicle manufacturer is pretty simple, right? That battery that's lighter, holds way more energy, and, charges almost instantly. We're looking at sources today detailing a really major potential breakthrough in materials science, the commercialization of silicon anodes. And this isn't just tweaking the chemistry a little bit. This is a fundamental generational swap of materials.
That's exactly right. For decades, battery evolution has been, well, a story of small incremental gains, little steps.
Yeah.
But when you talk about substituting the core material in the anode, that is a true paradigm shift. So our mission today is to really dissect the data. We need to understand how silicon promises this drastic increase in energy density compared to graphite. And, maybe more importantly, how these companies claim they've finally solved the instability problems that have plagued this material for years.
Okay, so let's quickly set the stage. For those of you who know this stuff, just bear with us for 30 seconds. The anode. It's the negative electrode. It's where the lithium ions are stored when you charge the battery.
And where they're released when you step on the accelerator, it's basically the storage unit. And its design fundamentally determines how much energy the battery can hold and how fast you can possibly charge it.
And this is where we've been hitting a ceiling.
Yeah, exactly. Graphite has been the standard because, frankly, it's stable and it has a decent energy density. It holds lithium through a process called intercalation. The best way to think about it is like a deck of cards. The lithium ions just slide neatly between the layers of carbon.
A very neat, very stable arrangement. But now graphite is the bottleneck. And our sources point to two massive problems forcing this transition. One is physical, the other geopolitical.
Let's start with the physical. Graphite is just dense. The anode is actually the most voluminous part of the whole battery pack. A single large EV battery can have more graphite by weight than it does lithium, or even the cathode materials like nickel and cobalt.
So if you can replace that heavy, bulky graphite with something lighter that holds more lithium,
you can shrink the battery pack while keeping the same range, or even increasing it. It completely changes how you can design the chassis of the car.
And what about the second problem, the geopolitical one?
This might be the bigger driver, honestly, especially for Western policy. Graphite extraction is costly, it can be polluting, and the supply chain is, well, it's incredibly concentrated. Our sources highlight this staggering fact. In 2023, over 90% of all global graphite processing happened in China.
90%. That's an immense supply chain risk. If you're a U.S. or European car maker trying to build out a domestic supply chain, or even just trying to qualify for tax credit.
Like the ones in the Inflation Reduction Act, yeah.
Relying on a single country for 90% of a critical component is it's a non-starter.
Exactly. The IRA has these requirements, for sourcing minerals from domestic sources or free trade partners. This graphite dependency is a massive economic and political vulnerability. So the move to silicon isn't just for performance, it's about economic security.
So lighter, denser, and with a more diverse supply chain? Enter silicon. The promise has always been there, but the execution has been tricky. How do they finally crack it? The recent news seems to be centered around a few key players. Group14 Technologies, which is backed by Porsche, and a U.S. startup, Sionic Energy.
Right, and their joint announcement is what's really interesting here because it provides concrete proof.
Mm-hmm.
And the core achievement isn't just about high capacity. With silicon, that was always the easy part. It's about stability under stress. See, silicon doesn't use that neat intercalation process. It uses alloying. The lithium atoms actually chemically bond with the silicon.
And that's where you get that famous mechanical nightmare, isn't it?
That's where things get really interesting. When silicon alloys with lithium, its structure it swells dramatically. We're talking up to 300% volume expansion.
Whoa.
Yeah. So if graphite is that stable deck of cards, silicon is like a handful of popcorn kernels. They just expand violently. And for years, that expansion would just fracture the material, cause electrolyte swelling. Basically, it destroyed the cell and led to rapid, irreversible capacity loss.
300% expansion. That's like charging your phone and watching the casing literally pop open.
Yeah.
How on earth did they engineer around that kind of stress?
So before we get to the how, let's talk about the proof of stability, because that's the real milestone. The sources detail specific tests. They put these anodes in industry standard pouch cells, 4, 10, and 20 amp hour sizes. And they maintain stable performance during charge discharge cycles and storage at 45 degrees Celsius and 60 degrees Celsius.
Okay, let's pause on that. 45 C is a pretty brutal operating temp.
Yeah.
But 60 degrees Celsius, that's 140 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a battery pack sitting on hot asphalt in Arizona.
Exactly. Hitting those high temperatures while staying stable is the work through, and testing it across different sizes proves it's scalable. They didn't just solve this in a tiny coin cell in a lab, they solved it in cells that are big enough to actually be used in an EV module.
Right.
Ed Williams, Sionic CEO, he really emphasized this. He said for years the industry chased silicon's promise but kept running into complexity and poor performance, especially with heat. The claim now is that they've broken those barriers. It's commercially viable.
That's the key. It moves from a concept to something you can put on an assembly line. Okay, so let's talk pure performance. What does this actually mean for the driver?
This is the headline figure that changes everything. Right now, high-performance lithium-ion batteries are in the range of, let's say, 200 to 300 watt-hours per kilogram. Silicon anodes can reliably push that up to 400.
So a 40% or more jump in energy density, that's massive. What does that look like in the real world?
Well, imagine two identical cars. One has a standard 100 kilowatt-hour graphite pack. The other, with a silicon pack of the same weight, could carry 130, maybe even 150 kilowatt-hours of energy. Or you keep the 100 kilowatt-hour capacity, but you shrink the battery's weight and volume. That gives you a sleeker design, better efficiency. It's a game changer.
And what about charging? Because that's what really kills range anxiety.
Group14 claims their anode allows for recharges in less than 10 minutes.
For less than 10 minutes.
For a usable state, yeah. And they say it offers 55% more energy than a traditional pack. That's starting to really compete with the experience of a gas pump, which has always been the big psychological hurdle.
But this brings up a really important question. What about longevity? Higher capacity usually means a shorter life. You need an EV battery to last a decade. Are we trading lifespan for power? I mean, if the material is swelling 300% every single time you charge it, how can they guarantee it'll last?
That's the critical question, and it brings us back to how they solved the stability problem. The companies say the tech is ready for the market, and they've demonstrated a lifespan of over 1,200 cycles. That's a commercially viable number. It meets or even beats what the auto industry demands.
Okay, so how?
So the traditional problem wasn't just the swelling itself. It was the failure of something called the SEI layer, the solid electrolyte interface. It's a tiny protective film that forms on the anode. When the silicon would swell, this film would crack. That exposes fresh silicon, which then reacts with the electrolyte, consuming it, and you get permanent capacity loss.
So the goal isn't to stop the swelling, but to build a kind of suit of armor for the silicon that can stretch 300% without breaking.
Precisely. And the breakthrough is in nanostructuring the silicon itself, along with a special binder. Instead of using a solid chunk of silicon, they use a porous or nanostructured form. Think of it like a microsponge. These nanostructured particles have internal empty spaces voids that allow the silicon to swell inward into those pockets without dramatically changing the particle's overall size. And then this proprietary binder acts like a super stretchy glue, holding everything together and letting that protective SEI layer flex instead of crack. That's the innovation, managing the stress at an atomic level.
That's fascinating. So it's less of a pure chemistry breakthrough and more of an architectural one, an engineering solution. So we have this stable, high-performance material. Where is it actually being used today?
Well, adoption starts at the extremes. On the consumer side, our sources confirm silicon anodes are already in some high-end smartphones in China. And the result is a battery capacity that's clearly superior to what you'd find in, say, an iPhone or a Pixel without making the phone any thicker.
And on the high-performance EV side, Group14's tech is definitely not theoretical.
Not at all. It's already powering the 100 kilowatt-hour battery in the McMurtry Sparling.
The hypercar.
The one that does 0 to 60 in a blistering 1.5 seconds. That proves the technology can handle the most extreme power delivery and charging you can imagine. If it works in a hypercar, it can definitely handle your SUV.
That's the ultimate stress test, right? So what's the path to the mass market? Are the big automakers signing on?
They are. Mercedes announced back in 2022 that their electric G-Class, which is a massive, heavy SUV, would use silicon anodes from a rival company, Sila. That 116 kilowatt-hour pack was aiming for up to 40% more density. And for that huge vehicle, it's still got a 239-mile EPA range, which is pretty significant. And if you connect that to the bigger picture, the integration is designed to be fast. Group 14 says their anodes are plug and play. That means they can be dropped into any existing factory, any existing cell format, without needing billions in retooling. Sionic expects their solution to hit the auto sector as soon as next year.
So manufacturers can make this switch almost immediately without huge new costs, and
Yeah.
we're seeing major U.S. players get in on this too.
Oh yeah, General Motors is a perfect example. They're developing their own silicon anodes. They see it as key to reducing battery size, weight, and importantly, cost. So while solid-state batteries get all the hype and steal the headlines, this activity, from startups all the way to Porsche and GM, it proves there is still so much room for improvement in current lithium-ion technology. The silicon revolution is here now to make current EVs immediately better.
So the key takeaway here is powerful. Silicon is really poised to deliver a genuine technological leap. It's denser, it's lighter, it enables faster charging, and it reduces that geopolitical supply chain risk we talked about. This will fundamentally make the next generation of EVs more capable and way more efficient.
And what's fascinating to me is how integrated this tech is. It's drop-in ready, the stability issues seem to be solved, and the density jump is huge. This kind of energy density changes the equation for, well, for any device that needs portable power. So here's a final thought for you to chew on. Given its success in phones and hypercars, what unexpected industry beyond EVs and smartphones will be the first to really capitalize on this? Will it be long endurance drones for logistics, high altitude surveillance, maybe next generation medical devices? The possibilities are now wide open.
Thank you for diving deep with us today into the future of EV power. If you enjoyed this analysis and you want more shortcuts to being well informed, be sure to follow the channel. We'll be back soon with another stack of sources to unpack.